Welcome to this week's episode of Delayed Offside, an OG episode starting your boys, Baron and Adam, original cast members and longtime serving members of Delayed Offside podcast. But something is a little amiss today. If you look around here, we are missing two cast members, specifically one Ryan Pilon and one Sanjay Kaushal. So we have some wondering as to where they are, and Adam and I have spent the last little while trying to investigate what happened to our esteemed co-hosts. Where have they been gone? Now, Sanjay's been missing a while here and there all the time. We know he's a man of mystery. He likes to get out and do different things. But as you can tell from looking at Ryan Pilon, he is a good-looking older gentleman. As a silver-foxed man, and a man that is, approaching his late, mid-40s. I don't remember. It's hard to tell because of all the gray. As he approaches those older years, he still has a je ne sais quoi that allows him to get a lot of work using his looks. So Adam was able to kind of reach out and find Ryan Pilon where he was currently working. And he shared with us this picture to show us how busy he is and why he can't be here today.
Yeah, so I'll share screen, and through my connections within the NHL, I was quite surprised, but here we are. There he is.
Beautiful. He's rocking his favorite pajama set, and he really shows it off, especially the little bit of chest hair there is a good way to let people know that he's, even though he's an older fellow, that he's not gray on top, just on top. I mean, it's not like a gray-haired chest thing. It still has some youth there. And now this is a long-standing thing where Ryan has been a kind of a in-secret Montreal Canadiens fan. And it kind of came up to a head last year where he was caught publicly at a game, I believe. And at that game, he was cheering. I think it was during COVID, wasn't it, Adam?
Yeah, it was actually. And, I kind of, after a few drinks with Ryan, I kind of got him to talk a little about it. And he said, it was the perfect time to go as a Montreal Canadiens fan because I could cover my face and no one would ever know. He said if this ever leaked, he'd be very upset. But there it is, folks. Oh, there it is. Yeah. There he is in all his glory.
And the mask helped him, considering that he's growing up in a house of Leaf fans. It was very hard for Ryan. So wearing the mask actually allowed him to be comfortable with his Montreal Canadiens fan. Now, Sanjay, I'm not so sure about. Like I said, Sanjay's kind of an international man of mystery. He said he was meeting someone famous tonight and someone he wished played for his team. And something about the greatest Albertan. I didn't understand. Do you know what he's talking about, Adam?
Yeah, actually, through connections that I have in Edmonton, I also captured a quick screenshot and picture of who he met. And actually, I'm quite blown away he got in, because here he is in all his glory with the best player in the NHL.
Oh, wow. Man, isn't that awesome? Sanjay looks so good. Since he stopped doing lifting weights, his shoulders have kind of sunk a bit. But you know what? I think it really that's a good color for him, and it seems to just fit his frame. And, and you never can tell how short someone is on a podcast because it is kind of difficultly hard to figure out. But, in case anyone's wondering, he is legitimately 4'10". So it's really cool to see. Yeah really good for him, man. I'm glad he's sharing that photo.
Yeah.
So that's why we're alone today, running the podcast without them. We also received a letter from Ryan, and he wanted to apologize. He said he hasn't watched a lot of hockey lately because he only looks at spreadsheets, and that's where all his info comes from. So he didn't have a lot to talk about, I think, was part of the issue. I think that's what he told you, too. Hard to watch the games because he was looking at his numbers or something.
Yeah, it was it was so he could be an analytic.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, makes sense. Makes sense. Yeah. Okay, we're gonna hit the ground running here, since we don't need to worry about what they're up to. If they don't want to spend time with you, you can click, subscribe, and spend time with us right here on the podcast. There's lots of big news that's happened since the last episode, one of our lowest rated episodes. And I think a lot of these things need to be addressed, but some of them are pretty tough to actually go through. One of the most surprising moves, maybe not surprising in the sense that it happened, but surprising in the sense that it finally happened, is that the Montreal Canadiens have finally let go of Marc Bergeron. Now, Marc Bergeron has been part of this organization for many years. He has had his hand in some of the largest, most, potentially shaping moves that this franchise has made in the last 20 years. And many times it's looked like this man was on the death's doorstep, that he was going to be out. And he always found a way to hold on till now. Adam, what do you think went wrong? Why was now the time to say goodbye to Marc Bergeron versus, I don't know, the 20 other times that they should have done it?
Well, I think this was his last kick at the can. He took the Canadiens to the final, and it just wasn't enough, the team that he put together. They were, beaten up. They just couldn't do it against a stacked Tampa Bay team. And we've seen kind of trips and stumbles along the way. But I don't know, how much leverage do you give the guy? And he's had years and years of it. So, and I think there was also that kind of his own skepticism as to what he was going to do at the end of the year, because this was his last year, and there was no extension talks, and it just didn't sound like good.
It's interesting to me that the goodwill of making it to the Stanley Cup Finals did not extend beyond this year, because there's been lots of moves where things have not worked out well for Montreal. I've gone to games there where they were already out of it and nothing was going on, and the building was still pretty rocking. And I look at this and I say, okay, here's a team. Here's these issues that they've had. They've lost their top goaltender. They lost their number one defenseman. They were barely a playoff team last year, but once they were in the playoffs, they could make some hay. And I look at that and I say, it's on the GM, but don't you have to also be like, hey, man, like, you lost your good pieces here?
Yeah, like it's tough because, like, he really seemed to find pieces that worked last year, right? You bring in Eric Stahl, you brought in Corey Perry, Toffoli, Anderson,
Yes.
Like, it all seemed to fit once playoffs hit. So, and then you have Cole Caulfield playing, above his potential at that time, I'm going to say, in the playoffs. And
his potential, or better than he's currently playing?
I think better than he's currently playing. I think he does have the potential to be that player, but I'm saying potential at that time.
Yeah.
Right. And, it was a good run, but you lost some pieces, and then your guys didn't start up the way they did. I don't think it helped that, like, maybe the organization was thinking, like, with all these players dropping off too, in terms of taking necessary mental health leaves, that maybe something needed to change too.
Since this has kind of come up, it kind of came up a little bit earlier that Jeff Gordon was going to become a part of the Montreal Canadiens organization, and I'm blanking on the name. The assistant GM literally was just let go, and so the writing became on the wall very apparent. And now it's become Mellenby, and he was kind of promised to be the next guy, but now it's looking like, okay, now there's going to be some changes, and they're wanting a GM, and traditionally they want a French-speaking GM and so forth. They haven't had a ton of French players as of late. And so there's been some big names that have come out the last little while. And three that I'll point to are ex-hockey players. One being Daniel Briere, another one being Roberto Luongo, and finally the latest one being Patrick Waugh, have all expressed interest in this job or have been reached out to or sought after in some form for this position. Which of those three do you think makes the most sense to this team, or should be somebody else?
I think all three of those are really good options. I think the one in the front for me would be Roberto Luongo, just because of what he did at the was it the Worlds last year, where he made up that team with Mangiapane and
I believe so. Yeah.
Yeah, he did a really great job there. So it kind of pumps his tires in terms of his small breadth of work. With someone like Patrick Waugh, I'd be interested to see if he has the patience to be a GM. And not like making snap decisions right away, because he was kind of always kind of like he's always had that temper. Do you know what I mean?
Right. He has a tendency to kind of blow up on things.
That's right. Yeah.
Or to make snap decisions.
But look at Hextall.
True, but you never saw that from Hextall in his positions. You have seen that in the other forms that Patrick Waugh has taken.
Yeah, especially coaching, trying to tear down the boards to get to.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Well, and there lies the thing with me is I don't think Patrick Waugh is a good choice for a lot of reasons. One, the fact and the way he quit
Yes.
on the
Colorado.
Colorado Avalanche, which is potentially long-term one of the better things to happen to them. Yeah, because Jared Bednar has been fantastic. But I think you look at that, the way he quit, the way he kind of put them in a bad situation because he didn't agree with the GM. And I'm going to say, okay, so he's going to become a GM and he's going to have a bad relationship with one of those guys already, at least in terms of certain things. Because I'm sure him and Joe Sack, there's no way that didn't affect their relationship. Two, him and the owner don't get along with something, he's going to snap out and quit on you because he's already taken that avenue before. So why wouldn't he do it again? Right?
He did it as a player too.
That's what I mean. So he just has that history. So I don't think he's a good choice. Luongo's also done something in Florida when it helped create their goaltending program. And I think that's something where he can put it in his cap and say, hey, look, this is something I've done. Hey, this is a big piece. And I can show you that I can be successful in a role. And I think that that's an important part. Also, I think he does have good relationships with lots of people around the league. And I think that's something important to think about.
Yeah.
One of the other things that's come up here, we're going through this episode as quickly as we can. So one of the other things that has come up here is, which was left for us as a note, like, click, subscribe, has to do with the Montreal Canadiens in the sense that we're a quarter of the way through the season. Traditionally, by American Thanksgiving, he said roughly 75% of the teams currently in a playoff spot make it and 25 don't. It's a little bit more than that, actually. It's about 77. But looking at NHL teams that are currently sitting in a playoff spot, which teams, roughly he's saying 4, won't be in that spot by that time? If 4 teams are going to get bumped off, do you think 4 teams are going to not, from that list currently, are not going to be in the playoffs? And which 4, if you do, or anyone, do you think won't be in a playoff position by then?
It's interesting because I'm looking at the Eastern Division right now.
Okay.
And we've got Toronto in first, Florida second, Tampa third, and we've got Washington first, Carolina second, New York Rangers third, and then our 2 wild cards are the Pittsburgh Penguins and the Columbus Blue Jackets. Now, for me, I could see potentially Boston sneaking in.
Yeah.
They're not far behind. They're 22 points. They're 2 points out of a wild card position, which is a win, right? And someone I can see falling out would be Columbus or even the Rangers. I don't think the Rangers have the style of play that's
conducive
to making it to the playoffs, right? They give up a lot of crazy chances, and they're playing a game that's scary in terms of you need your tender to be on good, or else they're gonna fall out.
Their tender has been good. In fact, he's one of the top guys for saves or goals saved above expected. But I think you make an interesting point there. Boston has been knocking, but they actually kind of seem to be through a little bit of problems right now, what with injuries, suspensions, players wanting out, which we'll talk about later, and COVID. But to me, I'm not sure about Columbus. They got a good record right now, and I think they've surprised a lot of people. They're having excellent goaltending. But I don't know how sustainable it is. You look at that difference, your wildcard teams from your main teams. Easy, Tim. Chill out. Sorry, the cat was just hitting the mic with his tail.
Yeah.
But Pittsburgh's been on the rise right now. Like, they're winning games. And Columbus, I just don't know that they have the stuff to get there. And Detroit's right outside of it too. I don't know that Detroit does. Washington, to me, was a team that was going to step back. Not the way they're playing. They're doing so good right now. I can't say that for them. So to me, I don't think 4 teams are going to miss. I think out of this group, I can see Columbus being out. And who takes that spot? I don't know.
Yeah.
Hopefully Boston, so they can play the Leafs. That'd be amazing.
Oh, that'd be deadly. And then on the Western side, we've got Minnesota in first, St. Louis in second, and Winnipeg third, and that's in the Central Division. And in the Pacific, we've got Calgary first, Edmonton second, and the Ducks third. And our 2 wild card teams are the Vegas Golden Knights and the Colorado Avalanche, who is currently tied in points with San Jose and Nashville. All have 23. So here it's a really tight race. I can see it's tough. I could maybe see Anaheim falling out. And Winnipeg has not really, Winnipeg will probably make the playoffs, but they haven't really impressed me at all this year. That first line's not doing much at all in terms of
No,
Wheeler and Scheifele. It's been actually
brutal.
awful production.
Yeah.
Traded Scheifele away in my keeper league, actually.
Oh, nice.
And, I can see Nashville squeezing in. I could also see someone like Dallas squeezing in. They have 22 points. And it's such a tight race. It's not even funny. LA has 21 points as well. So, they're all tight. They're all exciting. But, like, the only team I can see falling out really is Anaheim, and they're playing unbelievable. And Winnipeg I could see falling out. But I don't see Colorado or Vegas falling out either.
No, Colorado's getting Nathan McKinnon back, so I assume that they'll
Yeah.
be better moving on. Vegas is starting to get healthy for the first time in a while, so I think they also will start kind of regulating themselves. To me, San Jose will win a game, lose a game, crawl themselves into the conversation, but I don't see them making it. I saw one guy who had them third in the Pacific, one of the analytic guys on Twitter, and I can't remember his name, but I'm just like, man, I just don't see it. But I will say it. They have been better than I expected them to be.
Yes.
And I base that on the fact that Erik Karlsson is not playing like he has the last 3 years. He's playing good again.
Yeah.
So I think that's impressive. Winnipeg, I still think makes it just based on their goaltender history and the fact that they do have essentially a better defensive system. But that's a long season to get through still for them.
Oh, yeah.
And if they're not like they lost to Arizona, and in a 1-goal game where they are essentially lost to an AHL team. And that's tough. And I'm not saying that Arizona isn't giving their all because I think they're playing balls out. But man, Winnipeg should have crushed them. And that's where it's weird to me. Anaheim, too. I just don't think that they're going to be able to sustain it. Gibson's having an unreal season. But even then, there's certain games, as soon as he lets go, they don't have anything else in their tank.
Right. Exactly.
So Nashville, I don't have faith in either anymore right now. So I think it's pretty much stand pat. Someone's probably going to push one of those teams, but right now, I don't see much movement in the West.
Yeah, it's pretty well, and it's tight. That's the thing. Like it's always such a tight division. I don't see the way Calgary's playing. I don't see them missing the playoffs. The way Edmonton's playing, don't see them missing the playoffs. Their record against Pacific Division teams or Western Division teams,
Western Division,
is insane.
1 loss.
Insane. And let's pin it back to the last episode of Delayed Offside. I don't think they were mentioned enough in that conversation of, the best team in Canada. I think they were overlooked.
Yeah.
Sanjay
and Sanjay and Pilon. Yeah. They don't like to give credit where credit's due. But we'll talk about Edmonton in a little bit because we got some stuff to talk to there. Some major players have ended up in the news lately for different reasons. None good, but 2 players, which maybe 4 or 5 years ago would have been must grabs, absolutes, fantastic. You want these guys, have ended up on waivers for different reasons. Matt Murray, who was with the Pittsburgh Penguins, was traded and signed a huge contract with the Ottawa Senators, found himself out of the starter role, out of the NHL, and put on waivers and sent down. What are your thoughts on this move? Is Matt Murray done in the NHL? And is this at something where we should start saying, hey, this is a bad contract by a GM. This team is not better. Maybe it's time to start looking there too and say that needs a change. What do you think?
I think it is a case of, he was working well in Pittsburgh. Even, he had a good tandem with Marc-Andre Fleury. And then, he played himself into a contract with getting the Stanley Cup. Right. And I think the expectations were high. I think he was an overachiever in that regard over the course of his short career. And, you take a risk. And it's like that with like teams like, let's take Jack Campbell, for example. Toronto took a risk with signing Jack Campbell. Jack Campbell's worked out really well for Toronto.
Right.
Nothing against him. That's like the opposite of what we're talking about. But just not working out. And maybe at the end of the day, he is just a backup, better suited as a backup position. Maybe it's the defense in front of him.
Yeah. So one of the things that's interesting there is that if you if you remember back to it, he was not very good the last couple of times with the Penguins. Like when he was done, they chose him over
Yes.
Fleury, and then he didn't start to do very well. So Kevin Woodley was on the Jason Greger show, not today, but yesterday. So the 29th of, and he talked about how Matt Murray had to change his style to stay in the league, and he recognized it. But he got to Ottawa, and then they had to, like, he started having some games were bad as he was working through it, not getting enough rest, got sick, was out, came back, and then they overworked him. And it's just like you lose those new skills, you lose those things, you rely on what you know. And so he took a step back again and got shelled behind a terrible defense. But it's like I don't know if Matt Murray, I don't know what he is. He was a guy who had a couple brilliant moments. Even the last time they won a cup, Marc-Andre Fleury did most of the carrying to a point.
Did. Yeah.
And then it was up to Matt Murray to change things up. And until then, but Fleury carried that team most of the way. And I think he's a guy with brilliant moments, but I don't know that he's a regular, dependable NHLer. And maybe this will be a change, but man, that contract ain't getting moved. So he's going to have to work on things. And that relationship, there's no way it's good either right now.
No, and actually, there's one thing as an Oilers fan, I was like, don't claim him, don't claim him, don't claim him.
They couldn't afford to. They don't have the cap space.
No.
So you have that for to keep you happy. The other player, which once again years ago might have sparked some interest, is Evander Kane. Now, Evander Kane was serving suspension for his fake vaccine passport, I believe it was. Yeah. And that was 20 games, I want to say, but I'm not sure the exact amount
21.
Off the top of my head. 21 games?
21, yep.
So he was suspended without pay, not playing. He'd had a ton of other crap come up in the summer. His ex-wife accusing him of gambling on games, of abuse, and so forth. So all these things have kind of come up as of late. And there's lots of talk that at the end of the season last year, the other San Jose players were like, you can't bring this guy back. He's not good. And so he's throwing down on waivers, and there's lots of conversation that people are looking to trade for him at a retained price. I think he's got 3 years left at $7 million. So realistically, you'd get this guy for 3 years and roughly $3.5 million. The guy is still a producer. He was one of the top producers on the team last year. Do you think people bite on this? Do you think someone takes a chance on him? Or do you think this is it? He's going to ride out some time in the Barracudas?
At this point, with the NHL and what we've learned about the NHL over the last couple of years, it wouldn't surprise me. I don't think anyone should. If that was my team, I wouldn't want to touch him with the 10-foot pole, especially how he is in the dressing room, how he is in the media, and how he's been sought to kind of lie too. Like, you're taking it, you're a representation of the organization. And is that a mark you want, or is that someone you want representing, your team? Me? No. But, it also wouldn't surprise me if someone picked him up. There was
right.
Yeah, there were the case of the player that he had the case against him, the sexual harassment case in the draft this year.
Yeah, and he got picked by the Montreal Canadiens by Marc Bergeron, who's no longer.
I need to learn my lesson. Don't pick me. He was drafted.
Picked him. Yeah, you're right. The culture kind of does it. I also think too, the NHL has this thing where it's like, well, he didn't fit there, but he'll fit here, and here's why, right? Like, we'll take this player, and they'll fit into our system.
Reclamation project,
right? And these things do happen lots, and they have for years. But I think you made the comment, which is he's left groups with strong cores to go to groups with strong cores, and it's not really ever worked. It didn't work in Winnipeg. It didn't work for the Sharks, clearly, and so it's like, where is he going to go? But you have to think, too, if he comes back and he's hungry and he's playing well, man, at half that price for 3 years, someone's going to have a hell of a steal. And I think that chance, that potential to get a player who can get the same points or near the same points, that will always shine over anything else. Yep. So I think he gets traded. There was some talk to Vancouver, but I don't know. That team's a mess too. So I don't know why Sanjay was saying they were the second best team in Canada, but that's why you can't take any of his comments seriously. Actually, I'll admit that I was surprised with Vancouver. Like I thought they would be better. I thought they would be all around much better, and they have been awful, 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 awful. But that's their problem, not mine. Other players looking for a change of location. Jake Debrusk has asked for a trade from the Boston Bruins. Last couple of years, he's had production drop-offs, partially because he was sick, partially because his coach clearly hates his guts and doesn't want to use him, and they don't get along. This player, it's going to be interesting. If you look at that draft, they're going to have missed on 3 players in the sense they're going to lose Debrusk, and the other 2 haven't worked out. This is a team that could have picked up Kyle Connor, Matt Barzal, Shillington. Like, there are players that were available that are legit stud NHLers. What's his name? In Minnesota too, came after as well. Like just good players were available here, and they were passed up on. And you gotta kind of wonder if I think that's going to haunt that organization for a long time, much like same trade haunts the Oilers for the trading for Griffin Reinhart. But where do you think Debrusk is going to go? He's had a couple teams interested: Calgary, Edmonton, St. Louis. I think was 3 of them. There's got to be other places that are interested as well. It makes more sense to move him out west where you're not going to deal with him.
Yeah, and the name that keeps coming up, over the past couple of years is Edmonton. I don't know who you trade to get him, but it might be somewhat a fit. He plays a heavier hockey game, which might help. But yeah, I've heard Edmonton, Calgary, and St. Louis. So I don't know.
I'm going to check with Hockey Hound because they kind of had a little bit of a list of places that were potentially available for him. Canucks, New York Rangers, Coyotes have also been listed. 32 minutes ago, he said Darren Dreger said that maybe the Habs or Flames. Ones that are definitely interested are the Rangers, the Canucks, and the Coyotes. So that'll be interesting if that's where he ends up. So out of those teams, because I don't think the Oilers are going to work. They don't have the cap space. They've locked in on other guys. They have they filled those roles or whatever already. So I think we got to look somewhere else. But what are those other teams? Which do you think makes the most sense?
You had mentioned Arizona. Did you not at the end?
Yep.
Yeah, that might be a good place. I mean, if you watch Arizona, they're exciting to watch. They need a couple more pieces. He might be one that could help, boost them again because they're not great. So
I think it's weird there. I guess they have draft picks, but nothing really helps the Bruins from Arizona right away, right? Mm-hmm. So that's kind of the interesting thing. But at least if you get a draft pick back or something, you have a chance to make something work.
That's right.
Maybe they take Phil Kessel in exchange. Phil Kessel on a draft pick. I'm just kidding. I have no idea what they're going to do.
Back to Boston.
Back to Boston. So there's been a couple weird things that have also occurred this week, especially with hands. One being Brad Marchand's comment to Panarin about no one in Russia liking him, and Panarin responding with the glove throw, which I think is great because it brought a lot of attention to the sport, even just the action of throwing a glove. And he got fined $5,000 for unsportsmanlike conduct, but I think whatever. That's not really the big thing. I think it's important because it brought a lot of attention to the NHL. So that part was kind of neat. And the other one was Lemieux biting Brady Tkachuk.
Oh, yeah.
And it hasn't come out yet. It's still supposed to come out today what the suspension is, but it's sounding like it's going to be a bit. So take me through those 2 incidences. Yeah,
good pun. Yeah,
a bit. Yeah, it wasn't even intentional. But how many games do you think Lemieux gets?
Repeat offender? Not for biting, but for...
I don't know if he's a repeated biter, but yeah.
Yeah. I wouldn't be surprised if it's like a 5-game suspension.
You think it'll be that much?
I don't know. I wouldn't be surprised if it was 2.
Yeah.
Really? 2 to 5? I understand Tkachuk is mad and, they've got a lot to say and they're a little too outspoken in that regard. And, which is nice because it brings some drama to the table. But,
right.
I wouldn't be surprised if it was 2 to 5.
Yeah, I think you're in the ballpark. I think it's going to be around then. I think it's weird that it's taking so long, but I think they want the
Yeah.
games to kind of be over first so that you're paying attention to the games.
Right.
But I think that seems about the ballpark for it. It sounds like to me he's going to get some for sure. I don't think they like the image that he created. Whereas the Panarin, when they find him, they're like, whatever, you're a star, you're fighting with a star, it's fine. But it's like biting is not the thing you want to get attention for. Plus, it's gross. It's like spitting in someone's mouth.
Yeah.
I don't know. It's just weird. Guy could have had like an infection, needed a tetanus shot. Those things were kind of problematic. So I think you're right. He's going to get suspended a bit. Should
Yeah.
there have been more reaction around Panarin? Should he have been fined more, or should have Marchand been fined more, or been fined at all? I should say.
I don't know. It's tough because they said he made some sort of comment towards him about like Russia and Putin. Am I not correct?
Yeah. Well, just I think he said that no one in Russia likes you, and that set him off.
Right. Like grow, like grow up. I don't know. Like there's times I'm like, God, this is such an immature. Like there's a bunch of immature guys on this like ice, but like it works for Brad Marchand, right?
Yeah.
Like, so I don't know, but he threw a glove at him. $5,000 for throwing a glove at him. Like Brad
Yeah.
Marchand has licked a guy's face. What was his suspension for that? Like he's done much worse. Why $5,000 for like fine the guy $1 for Christ's sake? I don't know. I didn't think it was that bad. Like,
no, I didn't either. I think like a
like
glove wasn't a suspension thing. He could have just had a phone call and been like, no. I think it's hard to get Marchand on it because it's like, did anybody hear it?
it's his.
Did anybody know?
It's yours, right? Yeah,
Exactly.
Yeah,
Exactly.
So yeah,
But throwing the glove, everyone saw it. You know.
Yeah.
Still seems like a little bit of a dumb move to me.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah.
Whatever, fine, who cares? One of the big things to come out this week was the Olympic hockey jerseys. Now there's a bit of contention and disbelief on some people's parts. Some people were absolutely enthralled and loved. What were your thoughts on the Team Canada hockey jerseys? And then we'll go to one more subject about it.
Okay. I really like them. I like all three. My favorite is the red with the black on red. I really like the black as well. It's got some really nice different kind of tones and like textures almost in it. But I really like the red one simply because I think it's nice to see a Canadian jersey without any sort of white on it. I think it was just unique and new. And but after the Wyshynski tweet too, I have a hard time not seeing the turkey's ass.
Yeah. You know, it's funny that maple leaf was used in the last Olympics in Korea, and I didn't like that jersey then, but it didn't really matter. It wasn't NHLers that were wearing it, so it really didn't. I didn't think much of it, you know.
Right.
I was just like, but it's an ugly. I hated the segmented leaf, the big silver leaf, and the fact that they brought it back was kind of weird to me. Like usually every 4 years you're allowed to do something completely different. The Vancouver logo, which is probably the best one they've ever done, that one's gone after one Olympics. They never used that one ever again. Right. But they're going to use this leaf again in this design. Like Sochi's was used once and that was it. So I think they're really kind of pushing that part. When I saw the jerseys, I was not happy. I will say the black one has really kind of grown on me in a certain way, but they really pushed the black jersey. The white and red to me was my traditional Canadian jersey, and I do love that. The red one, I don't know how I feel about it. It would probably be the one I buy because I think it's the most unique one. Yeah. But I don't know that I like red and black necessarily. And once again, I also cannot unsee the turkey butthole thing. Like that's just weird. It's just one of those things where it just has an awe. Once you see it, you just can't unsee it. And you know, come Olympics, they're going to fire that at Team Canada any chance they get.
Yeah, a bunch of turkeys.
So if you buy a Team Canada jersey, who do you get?
McDavid.
Yeah, exactly. That'll be Sanjay too. He says he'll get somebody else, but he'll get McDavid just because it'll be the only way he can have that jersey and wear it. Just like he has a Gretzky jersey. He does have a Gretzky jersey. Yeah, exactly. With the continuing COVID cases, most recently Cody Ceci being put into COVID protocol and other players and other teams being hit by this, so much so that even Ottawa was really shut down by that, another factor and problem they're having. It looks like it's getting harder and harder for the NHL to go to the Olympics. Do you think the players still get to go?
Quick update. Lemieux suspended 5 games for biting Senator Tkachuk.
Boom, there you got it. Pretty good. Field goal. Yeah, right through the uprights.
Eat that stat, Pelon.
What's your Excel sheet say about that, Pelon?
Oh my God. Yeah. It's actually kind of scary because I really look forward to Olympic hockey with the best skill out there. It's fun to watch. It really amps me up. I'm a little bit terrified that this isn't going to happen with the NHL players again. And I wouldn't be surprised. And I'm actually kind of starting to prepare myself for that because we're like a month and a half away.
Yeah.
It's not looking good, especially with the new variant coming out too. Not good.
One of the other things I do think will be interesting, though, too, is that this is that last chance to potentially see Crosby and McDavid together. And losing that is a huge problem for me. That is the one thing we should have seen at the last Olympics that we weren't given. Yep. And it's another thing that we're not. And like, there's that conversation about how McKinnon and Marner were on one team and Crosby and McDavid were on the other for the summer. And they just killed everybody. They were so good. And it's like, God, you just want to see that because legit the top players playing together on the same line hasn't occurred since the Canada Cup. And if you could have something even close to that in the modern era, that would be absolutely fantastic. And I think it's such a loss for the game if they can't do it. But part of the reason I know that there's an issue isn't just even making up for games. It's actually for the COVID protocol. Because once you get over there, and let's say if I'm playing on Team Canada, and I get sick at the end, I might be there for 3 weeks by myself. So if I'm sick, locked up, different country, I finally get back. I've missed 3 weeks of hockey. I'm probably not in good shape for playing. And we go from there. I'm Pierre-Luc Dubois last year for the Winnipeg Jets.
Yeah.
It's not a good recipe.
No, it is not. I would agree. Yeah.
So I don't know. It's going to be interesting what happens. Well, Adam, I think that actually, it's probably filled our half-hour little episode here. I think for the most part, there's a couple more things we could talk about. Why Sanjay's wrong about that. Why he has bad taste in movies. What's Ryan's really age if you don't go from his hair color? But I think we could save that for next week. And I think that's the idea for what we're going to do. So with that, I'm Baron.
I'm Adam.
We're going to bid you adieu. Happy Delayed Offside. Like, click, subscribe. Tell your friends, tell your parents, tell your babysitter.
That's right. And share the pod. Take care.
See you guys.
See ya.